Good morning, good morning, good morning, and thank you for joining me on another episode of the Roundtable Talk Show. I am your host, Sharifa Hardy, and guess what? I have a very special show for you today, TGIF. This is the weekend show. We're getting ready to start off a holiday weekend, so I just want to say Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. So I go ahead and invite you to share this show because I know this show is going to be amazing. And as I always say, friends don't let friends miss out on the Roundtable Talk Show. And why would you? We're sharing so much education and information with you, the viewer. So share it with your friends. And while you're sharing the show, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our first guest, the amazing Miss Lauren Peacock. Lauren is the best-selling author of Female Likes Cheese, Comes with Dog, stories about divorce, dating, and saying I do, and the creator of the Divorce Case subscription box. She is an accomplished producer and humorist who has always gravitated towards storytelling. Good morning, Lauren. How are you?
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you for being here. When I was reading your information, I like the twist. I like the information, but I love to talk about divorce. I know that sounds crazy to some people, but for someone who has been divorced twice and looking to say I do again, it just happens to be one of my favorite topics. So I would love to hear more about you, what you do, what you're passionate about, and how you got into all of this.
Well, I obviously have been in the entertainment business for the last 10 years. I started off a producer, which I still do a lot of things, on set. Obviously with 2020, it's been slow kind of for everyone. And now everybody's kind of shifting back into the industry, which is great. Things are opening up. But with writing, that kind of all came about, I've always been into writing, ever since I was a kid, journaling and things like that, but, and the storytelling aspect. But I think that kind of really developed because of my divorce, being able to get those feelings out and having that outlet of, being able to journal and, especially getting back on the dating scene after divorce and this whole idea of online dating and Tinder and everything. And which, I'd been with my ex-husband for so long, I didn't really know what that stuff was all about. So that kind of developed, my love for writing again and becoming this dating relationship lifestyle writer. So that's kind of what I do now, as well as being on set, working for clients like ABC, Under Armour, Lindsey Vonn, Wiz Khalifa, and all that kind of stuff. So
I want to hear more about all that kind of stuff. So what kind of work do you do in that regard?
So, it as a freelancer, I can get a call from a client, whether it's for a commercial or advertiser brand, or I can get a call for a feature film. So, I've got a feature film that I'm working on this year. We're in development for it. And it's a great little love story. So it really just depends, it's about who in the network and kind of what, what comes up and what's on the schedule. And so depending on what I have lined up, and then in between that time, I'm always, looking to help people with, divorce and relationships. So, I do obviously, like I have been featured on Bustle and Hello Giggles, Authority Magazine, and things like that as a relationship expert and dating writer. And that's kind of where the divorce case came about. Was I was like, where can I fit where I feel like there's a need for women. I know what it was like going through a divorce, and as do you. There's always, you wish you had things, you wish you had an outlet and a place. And of course, there's so many, Facebook groups and things like that. But, there were things that I remember I wish I had, whether it was like, I spent a lot of time in the bath, the first month crying my eyes out. And so what kind of things can we gift women, whether it's, self-help books and bath products and things to kind of get them, on their journey to being an individual instead of feeling like they have to be with somebody. We want them to feel good about themselves so then they can feel good about being with someone else again.
Wow, Lauren, you have to watch me because I will turn this show into my own therapy session, right? I really will, because my question is, What happens when you get tired of being on the dating scene? When you get tired of the online dating, when you just like, you know what, I can't go on another date. I just, but yet you still want to meet that special someone.
Well, it can be exhausting. And I think what I tried to do when I felt like that, I'm all about humor. And you have to look at situations where if it's a bad date, um, you have to look at it humorously. Like, we're not meant to be for everybody, like not everybody's supposed to like everybody. And you have to take that and look at it in whatever positive way you can. And whether that's telling a friend a funny story about how, maybe your date was, I had a date try and feed me one time, like a baby. And I was like, what is happening? Like, what is going on?
Wow, because when you said feed me, first I'm thinking like, oh, he took her to dinner. I'm like, what was so wrong about that?
No,
But he
no.
literally like
tried to feed me. Like, I wasn't allowed to pick up my food. I was like, what is this? Some weird, bedroom type of thing. But yeah, you do get to a point where you do get burned out and you do want to quit all the dating apps and swear everything off. And I think surrounding yourself with obviously friends, but also a support group of women who do understand what you're going through, because sometimes your friends are married and are in happy relationships, and or maybe have kids and you don't, and they just truly don't understand what it's like to have gone through a divorce and get back out there. So that's kind of why I created the divorce case, because there is a community that comes with it. There are people who have been there before. And sometimes you just need to talk to somebody at 11 p.m., via chat and say, hey, are you feeling what I'm feeling today?
I love it. Now, I'm going to get a guy's perspective on some of that. I'm going to come back to you, Lauren, but I want to go ahead and introduce our next guest, Mr. James Pollard. James is the founder of theadvisorcoach.com, a marketing consultancy that works specifically with financial advisors. To date, he has helped more than 31,000 financial advisors get more clients. He is also the host of the Financial Advisor Marketing Podcast, a podcast that helps financial advisors with their marketing and business development. Good morning, James. How are you?
Good morning. I'm wonderful. This is a great day. I'm glad that it's Friday. Every day's a great day, but this is an even better day because I'm spending the time with you guys.
Oh, see, look at that. He a charmer. Y'all see that charm right there? I love it. I love it. James, tell us who you are. What do you do? And what are you passionate about?
So I'm passionate about marketing. I mentioned off the air that I feel like we have a lot in common because you had mentioned in yesterday's show, actually, that you went to school for accounting, but you wanted to be free, that you're an out of the box creative thinker, that you don't like to be in the lines, or at least you inferred that that's really what it was. I feel the same way. So I have always been able to walk the fine line between being data-driven, numbers. I love numbers. I love building business. I love systems that just work no matter what. Numbers don't lie. People can lie, but numbers don't lie. But I also enjoy being creative, trying new things, experimenting. So marketing is a blend of those things. So I've always been interested in that. Back in the early 2000s, I was one of the first people to literally create websites for like Google AdSense revenue. I've created different businesses, and I found out that the financial services industry had a huge need because depending on the study you read, there's like an 80 to 90% dropout rate in the first 3 years, but the training really hasn't evolved since the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. So I'm basically taking systems and approaches that have worked in other industries for years that financial advisors just they don't know about it or they don't truly understand it. I take those systems, put it in their business, and let it work. That's just like the magic that happens.
Well, it definitely seems like magic, but I have to tell you this comment though, because I always tell people what you see at 8 o'clock, we've already been talking for 15 minutes prior to the show. And when I first saw you, my initial thought was man cave. So someone watching the show, they just made the comment, they said, okay, man cave. So whatever you're doing is giving off that man cave vibe. So back to what you said about me and us being alike. One of the things I think we're very similar in is that we try to help other people. We use whatever skills we have for the betterment of others. So for me, just doing accounting and just looking at the numbers was very easy. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Numbers always make sense to me. People never make sense to me. As soon as I think I can count on a person or depend on a person, and I don't even want to make that sound negative, like if people don't come through for me, but or just say what I think a person is going to do or say, they completely surprise you. But you can utilize those skills creatively in marketing to come up with marketing campaigns. But most people don't even know the word campaign is a term from war. When you create a campaign, you're going to war. And so the best way to go to war is with numbers, with information, with knowledge, and not just throwing up random ads. So I agree with you wholeheartedly, James.
Yeah, there are even simple things that people don't really think about. Like a lot of people in business have heard of the 80-20 rule, where 80% of your results come from 20% of your activities. It's been replicated again and again and again. But they don't think about the fact that you could take 5 separate direct mail campaigns or letters, send them out. One of those, because it's just the 80-20 rule. One of those 5 is going to get 80% of your results, but they never get to a point where they even test those 5. If someone like me comes in and says, hey, we're going to run these 5 ads, we're going to try these 5 emails, so on and so forth, I can give them an instant win right away. So if entrepreneurs are watching this, that's like absolute gold to just take a simple idea that has been replicated across industries like the 80-20 rule and place it specifically in your marketing.
Now, when you say it, and that's that charm in you, it sounds wonderful. It sounds easy. It sounds perfect. But I think the struggle with small businesses is they look at each one of the 5 as a revenue source, as an expense. Back to accounting, right?
Totally.
They're like, okay, I already don't have the budget for one campaign. Now, for me to do 5 different campaigns, to do A/B testing or to test what works is not in my budget. So what do you say to those people?
Well, of course, you can't get around the budget idea when you're first starting. Of course, if you're absolutely at your very first marketing expenditure, of course, you have to have the budget. But assuming you have at least something in your business that is steadily generating cash. One of the financial advisors I recently worked with, he had a website that was consistently generating leads. So he had a base from which to work. He had pieces of content where he could look at this and say, this specific piece of content is proven to work. So if you are worried about your budget, take a look at your business and see if you have anything whatsoever that is already working, and you can expand on that. Because once you expand on that, you can take the money from that project and then pour it into new territory.
Good answer, James. But you know what? I am not a financial advisor. Let's see if we can find a financial advisor who just might happen to just be out there and see what she thinks. Oh, look, Misty Lynch. Misty is a certified financial planner and certified life coach, providing women with personalized advice, investments, and resources to help people handle money and life with confidence. She enjoys reading, learning, and taking courses. Watch baking championship shows and more. Good morning, Misty. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing great. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, because I'm dying to ask you about everything James just said. We got to do a validity test. But before we do that, let our audience know who you are and what you're passionate about.
Sure. So like you mentioned, I'm a certified financial planner and investment advisor. And I've noticed throughout my work that most people come to me not wanting to talk about percentages, dollars, specific stocks, and how they're performing. They're talking about how they feel. And so last year I pursued life coaching because it was something that I'd had an interest in, really just kind of getting. Feelings are completely left out of the conversation, usually when it comes to financial advice and investment advice. And I think that that's a problem because most people are reaching out for help because they want to feel differently. And so I think getting to the root of what people really feel about money, and a lot of times that's a lot of guilt, shame, embarrassment. They feel like they should have learned this, insecurity. And I think once those can get addressed and kind of worked through, you can really create a beautiful financial life and really figure out the things you want to do. And then money would just kind of be the tool to help you get there. So that's kind of where it all rolls in. And I've started a coaching program really to give an outlet for people to talk to somebody who's not just influencer or coach. Like I actually do have, the training in the finance industry to be able to help them with some of the issues that they're dealing with. but also competent to be able to handle some of the messy stuff that might come up when it comes to our finances.
Wow. Okay. So what were your thoughts on what James had to say?
James is absolutely right. This industry hasn't changed in decades. I remember when I first started as a financial advisor when I was in my early 20s, I was told to pick a mutual fund and be able to talk about it. Complex products were a good thing because they would just confuse people and they would just be like, okay, you do it. They wouldn't understand what they were doing. And really, it was very difficult to just go talk to centers of influence and use my network or my family as a source of clients because my parents were self-employed. I didn't come from money or a large network. And I ended up leaving the industry and working on the other side of it in the back office of a larger broker dealer for 12 years because I just thought sales, investing, like it's not for me. And I think there's a lot of women who have started in the industry and have left. And I think there's a lot of great men who have as well, because they didn't have that natural market or people just handing them leads, or you didn't necessarily, remind an older advisor of a younger version of themselves. And a lot of people end up leaving the industry, but I did love it. And I wanted to work with clients and I wanted to do things my own way. So I do think that there is more opportunity now for people who focus on planning and a more holistic look at somebody's financial picture, as opposed to just selling a product. So the industry has a lot of room, I think, to reach more people. And I think that it's great to see, more people getting out there and learning new ways to market and to help.
Mm-hmm. So James, when you hear that, what are your thoughts?
So I love the fact that she's mentioned that women love the industry and they do face certain challenges. One of the things that I found super interesting through my business. So I have a monthly newsletter it's a paid subscription that financial advisors can subscribe to. I've tried to do my own research on this, but I've deferred to other studies. They say between 15 and 20% of the financial advisor industry is made up of women. But my subscription base, the women who actually subscribe to this, they make up 30% of the subscriber base. So they are more likely to, I don't want to say seek out advice. They're more likely to stay subscribed. They're more likely to ask questions. They're more likely to get involved. The men tend to subscribe to the newsletter and like a small percentage ask questions, but they just subscribe and they don't really engage or do anything. The women tend to be more serious. And I've always wondered, I haven't figured it out yet, why they are. So if it's 15%, they're twice as likely to seek out that service. And if it's 20%, then they're 50% more likely to engage. So I've always wondered about that.
Maybe it is the aspect about women, but I'd love to hear your thoughts, Lauren.
So I think this is just coming from a psychological point of view. I think the reason why women probably are more likely to seek the advice is because, and I would like to actually know the age group in which they are more willing to pull that trigger. But I think overall women are a little bit more willing to be like more in tune with their feelings or admit their struggles or things like that, where I think men overall, and like I said, I don't want to say every single male is like this, but I think men are a little bit more reluctant to admit if they're having financial trouble, or be a little bit more like less likely to pull that trigger sooner. So that might be more what I've at least experienced with my friend group. So that might be some feedback. And I actually would love to touch on some things that Misty said in regards to just in general, when she was talking about how like going out, when you were talking about leads, like being a financial advisor younger, and how it was a lot harder. And that's why women were kind of giving that up. Is that what you were talking about? Correct?
Yeah.
So to me, that's interesting to hear you say that, because having growing up in the environment that I grew up with, and having my father have a bunch of financial advisors, and having friends go into that industry and work for, big firms, and then obviously them come to me and wanting, me, we're all in our 20s, wanting me to go with them. And, I think the reason why a lot of, friends of mine and myself and in my 20s, I wouldn't go with my friends is because, well, my dad already had people, so I'm going to stick with my dad's people. And I'm sure that's something that you heard and people in your firm heard as well, where why would I leave the people that my dad has been with for 20, 30 years for someone that's, in my opinion, fresh out, fresh, starting fresh out. And I'm, that's something that it's not like you don't want to support your friend, but I'm going to go with somebody who's got 20 years experience. Where I think now in my 30s, having gone through my 20s and, made some money, obviously made a lot of mistakes in my 20s, and be able to stand on my own without my parents' influence. I think that's where I think things may change for people with a little bit more insight.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, my personal, what I faced was a lot of people asking me if they could speak to my boss. I was confused to be somebody's spouse or somebody's assistant, even though I was, licensed, had all the same designations, if not more than the people that I was working with, that were men my age. And so I did, spend pretty much all of my 30s working behind the scenes. And then I don't know if it was the fact that I was turning 40 or what, but I just decided I am going to be on my own. I have to figure out a way to actually connect with clients. And I've almost found it being, a nice spot to be in now, because there's a lot of women who maybe they have no idea who their parents' financial advisor was, or their parents are facing some financial situations that they didn't really expect their parents to be in. So I think I can kind of relate to people who are older and younger. My parents are alive, and I also have a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old. So there's a whole lot of financial stuff going on. And I think there's a lot of people in the same boat. But yeah, I think, and I could see that. I think age was certainly an issue, especially when it came to, trusting somebody with a significant amount of money. But I do think there could be maybe some more support in the industry, or a little bit more, training. And some of the men did get a little bit more of a handhold, because they reminded the older gentlemen at the firm of themselves. They would go golf together. They would do things together, where the women sometimes get boxed out of that equation just because it feels uncomfortable, or a little bit, it's just a little awkward, and it's just an unusual shift. But I'd love to see more women join the business, because it is really fun.
And it's sad that there's not, in college, there's not for everyone a little bit more education that it's okay to not have to. And this is also a psychological dynamic, that you don't have to do everything that your parents have done. You don't have to follow in what physicians they use, what financial advisors they use. I mean, there's a whole dynamic on letting your parents basically guide you in what they've done their entire life. There's that individuation that I think, especially millennials, I think more so the younger generations are understanding that and have started their own kind of path. But I know millennials have really struggled to understand that individuation.
One of the things that stood out to me, and what Misty had to say, as well as what Lauren had to say, is I don't believe it's just that industry. I remember going to meetings as an executive and being told to just sit there and look cute. So I completely agree when you said people believe that you're the secretary or the assistant, or, it is, I think a lot of times it's the way society views females in general. But I also think these times, they are changing. Women are stepping out there. They're stepping in the forefront, just like what you said, Misty. James, what are your thoughts on what Lauren and Misty had to say?
I think it's all dead on. There are, especially with the individuation thing. So my academic background is in psychology. So I relate to a lot of that. There was a point in my life where I looked at my family and I started dissecting their behaviors and dissecting what they did, what their results were. If you were 54 years old and you've been working the same job and you were still complaining, well, maybe something's off there. Or there were other family members who had a problem and worked to change it. I would study that. So I would be an individual from the people who I didn't want to model, but I would closely replicate the ones that I did want to model. But I would pick certain behaviors, because not everyone is great 100% of the time and no one is bad 100% of the time. So I would take their individual qualities and I would just pick them out and try to craft the person that I wanted to be.
And sorry.
No, go ahead.
At what age did you recognize this, or did you start to do this?
About 17, 18. That's why I took it really seriously. I think for years, you just model people and you look for guidance and you're trying to get it, but you never really sit down and say, okay, I'm going to consciously choose to pay attention the next time X happens or the next time Y happens. If my uncle has money out, I'm going to use that as a way to start a conversation about money. If I want to model his money habits, or if my mom had a conversation with someone and someone was being angry with her, and she's incredible at what people would call conflict resolution and like de-escalating situations. She just doesn't get angry. She's like, yes, I understand. I hear where you're coming from. And I tend to be the opposite. My like natural state is just, no, my foot's on your neck. You're never going to like, I'm aggressive, but I took her behavior and now I'm pretty darn good at de-escalating and keeping people calm. If there's an angry employee, if there's an angry team member, an angry client. So I've taken like her behavior and used it for my benefit.
But you're really lucky because not everybody is able to be that self-aware at a young age. You know, there's people that are raised with narcissistic parents, or maybe somebody has, you know, a mental illness to where they're not able to, they have to figure out ways to survive. And maybe they don't understand what their own, you know, insecurities or whatever, you know, they might be a late bloomer to understanding kind of that self-awareness and the mindfulness and kind of, like you said, how to deal with conflict resolution and things like that. I mean, you know, personally for me, I was a late bloomer. So having to learn all of these, like, I guess, ways to cope and to like really understand and realize like, you don't have to react to everything. You know, that wasn't until like my mid 20s to late 20s, as opposed to like being 18, which now it's great, you know, because I have all those tools in my tool bag. But I think that's something that, you know, I think that is changing. You know, I think we are lucky that, you know, this is being brought in the attention of schools now, you know, with mental health and that it is okay to seek help, as opposed to, which I'm sure everybody can agree here, you know, my parents are boomers, but in general, people I think in their mid 50s and older haven't thought as therapy as something that was, you know, okay to seek all the time.
Mm-hmm. I would definitely agree as far as therapy, but also prior generations had the belief that women shouldn't know about money or finances. The husband was the one who handled all of the finances. So it was interesting to me, Lauren, earlier when you were discussing James' email list and the women being the ones to ask questions. You know, being an expert on divorces and relationships, do you feel also the women were asking more questions because they had no idea about the finances in this situation? Whereas the men, maybe they had the information already.
What I'm seeing now is I am seeing women fight harder for you know, what they can and they can't get. I think a lot of attorneys have always, you know, they are going to fight for the client, but they've always said pick your battles, you know, to win the war. You know, I think that's something that they want to do what they can for the client, but they want the client to get out as quickly as possible and as happy as possible. But, you know, if it all of the obviously depends on the state that you're in and the rules of the state and your assets and things like that. But we are seeing a lot more women be okay with asking for things and not being afraid to say, no, this isn't fair.
Mm-hmm. Misty, are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah, I am. And, you know, even with divorce, women live longer. I mean, 80% of women are going to be in control of their money at some point, that towards most of us at the end of our lives. And that's not the right time to be trying to learn how to manage it. So I do think that people are raising their hand for help. I do have clients who ask me all sorts of questions. They have to negotiate with their boss. They're triggered whenever a certain coworker walks in the room and they're like, I think I'm just going to quit. That's a bad financial choice based on thoughts that are just going on in their head that we can explore and take a look at and see if we could work through. So I think women, and we're making more money. I mean, I think that it's hard for me to blame my mother or grandmother for not teaching me more about money when you couldn't get a credit card as a woman until 1974. Like, who was teaching them? Like, you're basically like praying that things work out was probably my grandmother's financial philosophy. And, you know, I think my mom, you know, they owned a business. They had to kind of work through things. And a lot of times as a kid, I learned like money's going to cause a fight. Money's going to cause stress and anxiety and fear. And so I decided to learn as much as I could about it. And that's where I went down my career path, where other people might say, I'm going to avoid this topic as much as possible because it's really scary. So I think a lot of people now by choice, maybe they're not getting married until their 30s. And so they have a job, they're managing their own money for a decade. Like, and then with the amount of debt, it's almost impossible to avoid learning something about money, especially for people who are, millennials, Gen X. I mean, it's, there's a lot that you have to just praying for someone to take care of you, like your pension or Social Security. It's just thing of the past.
Yeah, I haven't been married 10 years, but I've been with my wife over 10 years. She manages our household money, like the bills, electric, water, mortgage, utilities. She's got her own Roth IRA. She's got her own investments that she manages. I don't even know what her investments are. I know she has them. I know where to access them, but I'm not digging in there. We have like an emergency set up with LastPass, like the family plan, where if God forbid, anything happens to me or her, we can get everybody's accounts and we can get in there. But she manages that. I manage the business that I have. I have a separate business as well. I manage the businesses. She doesn't. I don't get into the household side of the finances. I reserve the right to like audit the finances, where I will go in and make sure like everything's still there. But I manage like the businesses, and she is respectful. If I want to hire someone, if I want to have a large expenditure that's, going to be several $1,000s to have, she doesn't sweat that. I know there are other couples who run businesses either individually or together, and they're constantly down each other's throats. Why did you hire this person? Why did you buy, if it's like a coffee shop, why'd you buy this $4,000 espresso machine? We already have the other one. We just get it serviced. So the boundaries that we have been amazing. We've had zero money fights ever. We've never had a money fight. And
Wow.
I think that's because we respect each other's boundaries.
I love that. I love that. I love that. That was so interesting. One of the things that stood out to me though was when you said, I reserve the right to audit. So my question is, did you actually say that to her? Like, I reserve the right, because communication is key. And I think that's what makes the difference.
I say it jokingly.
I know, but I'm
Meaning,
just saying, but you verbalized it.
oh yeah, totally. Because so for example, our electricity bill, well, our total utilities for the power is like 165, it's like 147, 150, and then 1 month is like 227. So I'm like, hey, can I take a look at that bill? Because usually I'm just not like on top of it. Hey, are you leaving the lights on or running the power? Did you leave the stove on? I don't do any of that. But I want to look at the bill in case there is something crazy that's going on that maybe she missed. It's just a fresh set of eyes. That's one little specific example. If car insurance gets missed, or if I have an alert that comes up on my phone because we share the account, it says, hey, your payment is due in X days, or like, thank you for your payment, and I don't get the thank you for your payment, I'll just do a quick nudge. I'll be like, hey, did you make that car insurance payment? It's that sort of thing. Not as if I'm putting on glasses and the little visor and going through every statement. I don't do that. But
Okay,
just
so
little things that come up like that.
that's what we're gonna do, right? Every show, not every show, but this show, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna partner James and Lauren, right? And actually Misty, you're gonna get some financial advice. But James is gonna do workshops for couples, James and his wife, Lauren. So we need to work on that and get that out there, because people who are dating, they need to know the things that James is teaching us. You ready, Lauren?
Okay, I think I understand the activity, but I'm not sure.
We're starting a partnership with James. James is
Oh, okay. You're going to help me with the dating people with which actually this leads to a question that I wanted to ask. And it was about finances. What do you think about people that are dating that move in together and how they should split their finances? Should they have a like joint fund where they put things together for like trips? Should they split the finances evenly? Because I've actually had a lot over 2020. It's been crazy. People have been moving in together very quickly after meeting and, after a few dates. Like, how should people really be splitting their funds?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
My wife is like my first real love, like girlfriend, whatever. And we
Aw.
just were right for each other. We had a long distance relationship. We lived together in college. That's everybody's like, oh, that's a terrible move. Don't live together. Like college is tough and all this other stuff. No, like we knew we were right for each other. So it worked out. I wouldn't recommend that to other people though. If they were like, hey, I've got this girlfriend or whatever at 18, do you think I should move in with her through college? I'd be like, no, probably not. It just worked out for me. Yeah, I have no idea. Here's what we do. She has her own stuff, her own accounts. We have one joint checking account that has maybe $3,000 or $4,000 in it. I don't know right now. It's a small balance to just make sure that bills get paid and stuff. And that's it. We don't combine finances. We don't have a joint investment account. We don't really combine anything. My brother-in-law is actually on the dating scene, and I think he had mentioned something in the past where he was serious about a girl and she wanted to like combine finances and stuff. And I'm not going to get involved in his business and be like, no, don't do that. But in the back of my mind, I was like, I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. And I think it was a scenario where he made significantly more money than she did. And yeah, I'd kind of want to combine finances too, if that was the case. But I think it's such an individual thing for people. They have to come to their own conclusion. I know there are people who say you should never have separate finances. You're married and you have to be a couple and everything has to be together. Well, that's cool. Like, more power to you, but we don't.
But James, you mentioned that you wouldn't recommend doing what you did, even though it worked out for you. Why wouldn't you recommend it?
Because it's such a low probability. The
Aw.
chance of a relationship working over 4 years of like personal change and personal transformation and finding yourself, that kind of thing, it's so low. And we know several people, both from, because we went to separate schools. So she had her own little group of friends from her school. I had my own little group of friends from my school. And then we had friends in college as well. So my friends in college, her friends in college too. So those are 4 separate groups of friends that had relationships at the start of this period of life. Not a single one worked out except for ours. So it's almost as if you truly believe, and it really is, you have to go with your heart, I guess. But just like statistically speaking, it's such a low chance.
Statistics are hard because I
know.
met my husband and we met online, and we met a month after we met online. He lives in another country. He lives in England, and we dated for 3 months, long distance. We got married, and we've been married 3 years, and he still lives in England. He has not gotten his visa due to 2020. So it looks like he's going to be able to come over here this summer. So I feel like it just depends on the couple, and it depends on the situation, and it depends on how committed you are.
So
Yep.
then, Lauren, are you like James and you're saying, okay, it worked out for me, but the statistics and the odds, I wouldn't recommend it? Or are you saying to someone, I would recommend a long distance relationship, maybe based on these things?
I mean, I talk about it a lot just in general in articles and in the new book that I'm writing. You have to be willing to, one, be honest with yourself, be honest with the other person, be committed and do the work. Like we've done the work, we've put in the time, and it's not easy being married to somebody in another country. It's hard. You have to figure out travel schedules. You have to figure out time that you're taking off of work. I mean, I'm lucky that I am a freelancer, so schedules are a little bit different. But and then when a pandemic happens, and then you can't go visit that person, and you don't know when you're going to see that person again, and your relationship is tested. So I think it's about, who you are as an individual. Some people, I mean, you look at people that have been married, how many years, and they, they've lived together the whole time, and their relationship is not working and they're getting a divorce. So, maybe they weren't meant to be in the first place. So every relationship is different. I don't sit here and say, oh, it's not going to work out for you. It worked out for me. I think it really truly is based on the couple and what you're willing to do and what you're really, how you're willing to commit.
Yes. Misty, I'd love to hear your thoughts on combining finances.
Yeah, so I think that combining finances, and this is where it can be tricky for couples, because a lot of times people feel differently about what's a frivolous thing to spend money on and what makes sense. So there's a lot of times where I'll see couples who are fighting, they're stressed out, they are disagreeing, And it's because everything is combined. And so, and I think people also maybe value work outside the home, or whichever spouse is making more money, as the more important person. The more their time is more important, the other person is not. And I don't believe that's true. I think that you can't look at that and just say, okay, they get to make more of the decisions, they get to have more free reign. If they say vacations are a waste of money, we're never going to go. So I think that there is something to having a little bit of your own individual budget, whether it's a joint checking account or savings account that you have, and you each have your own individual ones, because I don't spend a lot of money shopping. My husband loves buying sneakers, and I don't want to be the one to say, like, what do you
No
have
more
the pair of
sneakers.
Jordans for? You have 7 upstairs already. You don't need those. Because then I start sounding like his mom, and I'm not his mom, I'm his wife. I don't want to fight with him about that stuff. If he knew how much it costs for me to go to the hairdresser, he'd probably say, why don't you just go to Supercuts like me? And I don't want to. So like, I don't want to have those fights. I want to say, okay, how much is fair for us to each contribute to the joint? It doesn't have to be fully equal, but it could be something that you agree upon that's enough to pay the household bills, maybe pay for the kids, go on a vacation, do some of the things that you agree together are important. My husband and I agree our kids are important. We love our home. We have a dog. Those things are priorities. If something comes up, we are already 100% on board together that we're finding a way to pay for them. And if I want to go out to dinner with my friends, and I want to be able to do that whenever I want to, because it's something that makes me happy. Does he feel the need to do that? Nope. And that's fine. So I think a lot of times with couples, it's good to kind of have a baseline, like, okay, these are our ground rules. Like, these are the things that we agree 100% matter. And then, if there is a little flexibility or a little bit of independence, I think that can avoid a lot of those stupid fights where you're like, why'd you put this in the Amazon cart? It doesn't have to cause a fight, but it really can. It can really set people off if they feel like they're being judged, watched, controlled, and money is a huge part of that. And so that's why a lot of couples cite divorce as, money is a reason for the divorce. It's causing all the problems, but it doesn't have to.
What are some of the recommendations that you make to new couples, when they're just starting out? Maybe there's a conversation that they should absolutely have. What would you tell them?
Yeah. And I think that that's what's kind of fun when I get to work with couples, is because I'm asking questions as an independent third party. And so I don't care what they say. I've worked with couples where one guy already had a baby fund, and this couple had not even gotten married or talked about kids, and he was already saving for the kids that he wanted in his future. And so it's really funny how some people have their bank accounts listed and all their goals, and other people aren't really thinking of it. But it's fun to kind of talk about, what do you want to do? What's important? What do you want your life to look like? Where do you want to live? Some people want to move when they retire, and other people are like, we're never leaving this place. So having those things come up before it's like Judgment Day is really, kind of helpful. And I do think that couples should know how much debt the other person's in. They should know if they're on board to help pay it off, or if that's kind of going to be a separate thing, because it almost becomes like another person in the marriage when you're marrying somebody who has like 6 figures of student loan debt. And that causes a lot of shame and embarrassment, where it's easier to just kind of get it all out there, talk about it, maybe have a little bit of visibility, like you mentioned, auditing some of the bills or looking at things. I think a lot of women take the household bills and the day-to-day stuff and never look at the big money, the investments, the long-term. I think that should change. I think there should be visibility in both directions for spouses, because a lot of times the women have no idea how much they have saved for the future. They just know what's in the checking account right now. So having some clarity for both people is huge. And I know, I think James mentioned, I think they're doing it pretty well. It's kind of like, okay, there's no secrets, but like, this is where I feel like, my abilities are strong. And this is where you feel we can kind of talk about it and look at it. And then you won't have those money fights. It's when the surprises happen that, it can really impact a relationship, even people who love each other a lot. And money can't buy happiness, and it can't keep a marriage together. I mean, we've seen that this week with Bill and Melinda Gates, money.
That was going to come up. I knew that was going to come up. I thought Lauren was going to bring it up when she was talking about people who've been married for years. I was like, here we go, 27 years, and now the divorce. But hey,
Yeah,
Well,
money
I
can't
feel
fix
like I
every
got
problem. That's
really
for sure.
lucky because coming from the personal finance world and getting involved in that and hanging out with literally the best of the best financial advisors and the worst of the worst. Like I've seen both. My wife and I sat down and we had the priorities conversation, which is really important. The guy with the baby fund, like obviously that's priority for him, and someone who wants to love him and accept him got to accept that baby fund. Right. So we sat down and we were like, just to be, and it sounds so simple, but, and some people are uncomfortable having this conversation. I totally get it. Like we both want to have X amount of money in X amount of years. And all financial advisors have this conversation with their clients where they're like, if you save X every month, invested in this, it's going to be Y. Here's your projection. So we kind of sat down and we said, for example, we have to save this dollar amount every single month and we have to invest it because our joint priority is to have X amount of money in the future. So I really don't care what you do. If you, as long as that investment is made, we're good. You can buy whatever shoes you want. But if we're supposed to invest $3,000 a month and one month we invest 2,500 because you had an expenditure, well, it's got to be $3,500 next month, or it's got to be, we got to balance this out because no matter what, come hell or high water, we are getting that money invested. And that's just like the mindset that we have. And I don't claim to be a relationship expert. I'm not at all, but I just got super lucky and it worked out for me. I don't make any bones about it. It's just
No,
that
James,
she
I'm not,
understands that
I'm
she
not,
wants the
I'm
money and I
not.
want the money too. So it's
No, I'm
cool.
not going to let you say that, James. I'm not, because you may not be a relationship expert, but what is clear is that you are clear on what you want and you communicate well and you are concise. You're not just like, oh, I hope we get together and I hope things work out. No, this is the plan, just like Misty's board says in the background. You have a plan. So that's why you're able to achieve it. That's why I said, I believe, I was joking with Lauren earlier, but I really think at some point, if you start speaking to people about some of the things you've learned and your experiences, you have a lot that other couples can learn from.
Yeah. Thank you. It's just, I brought up the brother-in-law. He is trying to find someone and he is dating. And these girls, some of the girls out here are just, man, they have their own problems outside of money and you've got to deal with those before you can even get to the money. So it's not as if you're going to get into a relationship with someone. You got to feel if you like this person. Do you have stuff in common? Do you have the same values? Like your temperaments can be different. My wife and I have completely different temperaments, but our values are like this. So you have to figure all that stuff out because it's not like on the third or fourth date, you're going to sit down and be like, hey, what's that Roth IRA looking like? Or like, what's your life insurance looking like? It just doesn't happen. It sounds nice in an article, but it just doesn't, for the most part, doesn't happen.
Lauren, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Look, dating is hard. And I kind of, started to take this idea of it's like a job search, and you hate putting it that way, but it is. I mean, you go on, when you're looking for a job, you don't just start it and quit after one, like some jobs work for you, some don't, after an interview, they may feel you out, you're feeling them out, and you may get to the next round, you may not. And it really is that needle in a haystack. And it really, I mean, I went on all the dating apps. I didn't just pick like one or two. I tried them all, and I think, you have to be willing, just like a job, you have to be willing to fill out the resume or the profile and put in all the stuff. And it, even if you're trying to, with friends, meet through friends, and if you're doing the online thing, I mean, if you really want to find a partner, they're not going to find you sitting at home watching Netflix. You have to put yourself out there, whether that is online or in person. I know depending on the state, things are opening up with COVID and you can do a few things, but it's hard. I mean, nobody's going to say that it's easy. And I think, you do have to find, somebody who's, values align with yours, because if they don't, that the fundamentals, I mean, if you don't have the same, it's never going to work in the end. And I think the most important thing that I've told a lot of people is you have to be honest, with what you're putting out there, and you have to put your deal breakers out there, because if you really truly don't want somebody who smokes, then you can't say, oh yeah, it's fine that they quit at the door, because really, did they just quit at the door for the date? Stuff like that is is important to be honest about.
No, Lauren, what you just said, I agree with 1,000%. Like, you are absolutely correct, especially when you said you have to put yourself out there. But do you find that even in 2021, that people are still afraid of, being on the dating sites, not because they think anything would happen, but of just simply putting themselves out there, that people still feel like Mr. Right will just kind of wander in? Some people feel like dating sites aren't for them.
Yeah, well, yes, there are some people that find that, but I've actually found that a lot of people that I've met recently met somebody in 2020 and have actually moved in faster than I would have recommended somebody to move in. So there's been a lot of people that have moved in together, have started to try and figure it out. I haven't heard of some people that I've heard this has happened. Nobody's broken up yet. And even some that haven't even moved in together, I know one person, he's about to be with someone, a year. So they met a few months after, the shutdown, the lockdown. So I think a lot of people are, from what I'm seeing, the people that are truly trying to find somebody, they are saying, okay, they've met in the pandemic. They're saying, okay, this is clearly a time where I need to be honest with myself or with you, or saying, let's give this a real shot. And things have started to work out, because I think when something like a pandemic happens and you really start to think what's important to you in your life, your family, maybe you broke up with somebody in the beginning of the pandemic, started, dating somebody new because you figured out what was right for you. I think it's really put a lot of things into perspective. I think the people that were off the dating apps, they're starting to figure out maybe what dating apps are right for them. So they've said, no more Tinder, no more Bumble. I'm going to go ahead and pay for the match. I'm going to go ahead and pay for a more elite dating site and truly get serious about finding somebody, because I'm 30 now, or, I'm 40 and I'm divorced, and I do want to find the right person.
I'm 45 and I'm divorced, and I do want to find the right person.
Well, let's do it.
I'm gonna work with you, Lauren. We're gonna get out here. We're gonna help some people and change my life. Now, this has been a very interesting show. I loved it, had a blast. We are coming down to the last few minutes of the show. And what I love to do at the end of every show is just simply allow my guests the opportunity to speak directly to the audience, to everyone who is watching this show live, as well as everyone who is watching in the archives, and let them know what you want them to take away from your appearance here today. And we're going to start with you, Misty.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, if you're somebody who's looking for help with your money or your mindset, or both, I would love for you to visit mistylynch.com. I have blogs there. My podcast, Modern Money with Misty Lynch, is starting back up, where I'm talking to business owners about their path into entrepreneurship. And a lot of times there were financial struggles or tipping points that really led them to where they're going. And I am starting a new coaching program, Modern Money Coaching, in June. And the first topic we're going to be talking about is boundaries, which came up a little earlier. And so I think that could be one of the best things that you could do financially, is to know how to establish and maintain boundaries, so that you might be in a new relationship, you might be in a new job. And if you know where you stand and you can, clearly express what is okay with you and what's not, and you can hold your ground, I think you can feel a lot more powerful as you kind of work your way through life. So that's what we're going to be talking about next month. And I really appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. I think that's the word in the air, in the ethers right now, boundaries. Yesterday, my mom shared this beautiful quote about boundaries on Facebook. And then I had a guest. I did an interview on Ask Sharif, a videocast yesterday evening, and the guest was talking, and she was like, yeah, more people have to set boundaries. And then you mentioned boundaries. I'm like, is that the theme in the air these days?
Yeah, I think a lot of times we get upset for people for violating boundaries they don't even know exist. I think we think that people, like we have a manual for how bosses should act, how mothers should act, how husbands should act. And then we get upset when, things don't go that way, instead of realizing that we're in control of our own feelings, our thoughts about the things that are happening around us. And it's okay to tell people what you want. I think it can be a very loving way to communicate with people, is to tell them, how you feel. And, I love seeing you, but if you come over unannounced, then I might not be here. I might not open the door, instead of constantly feeling, taken advantage of and taken for granted. And it's hard to do. I think it's hard to do with bosses. It's hard to do in relationships. But I think if you love someone enough to have that conversation, there's could be some real progress there instead of just cutting out toxic people from your life or finding a new job with a new set of people and problems. So I think it's a good place to start to help people. It's really self-care in a way.
It is self-care, and I'm really good at self-care. I just had to laugh when you talked about people showing up at your house unannounced. You know, after my run for city council, I've been in the community a lot, and my friends always laugh. There's always someone just showing up at my door. It's usually a homeless person, by the way, but they just show up at my door because they're like, Sharifa will help us. Sharifa will give us water. So it's like, sometimes I have to get better at setting the boundaries with people, but I love to help and be of service. Thank you, Misty.
Thank you.
James, what do you have for us?
So I didn't get a chance to mention it on the show, but one of the charities that I work with a lot, and I've probably donated tens of thousands of books to children across America, there's a charity called First Book, and they help children get access to books and educational resources that they need. So if this message has helped you in any way, if I've inspired you, you're important, you matter, you can pay it forward. Something that you do for someone today will come back to you. If you believe in karma, I do. It's incredibly important. So if you can donate some money to First Book, I would greatly appreciate it. And the off chance that you are a financial advisor out there and you're listening to this, chances are I could probably help you. So you can get at me at theadvisorcoach.com. But I just want to spread a message of positivity. Like, you matter, you are important. Good things are coming your way.
James, first of all, we still on the show. So we got that little plug in there. So that's good. Number two, I love the energy and the passion of what you just said, but it was a lot of energy. So let's break it down. Tell me about these books again. You donate the books to who? How can we help? Where do we go to make the donation?
So specifically, so the website is called firstbook.org. And within my business, the newsletter that I did mention in the show, when someone subscribes, it's $99 per month. I take the entire first month's payment and I donate it directly to First Book. I just give it to them. It helps children get access to the books that they need. It's called First Book because a lot of times the book that the kids get is actually the first book they will ever own. And I wouldn't be where I am right now. You see the man cave. I know you said somebody mentioned the man cave. Got a pretty cool place here. I'm blessed in a lot of ways. And that never would have happened had I not been a reader, had I not had access to the educational resources that I have. So it's incredibly important for me to make sure that kids get access to what they have. I have thank you cards here. You can see I have thank you cards from kids that they've written to me. Say like, thank you for the books. Thank you for helping us, that kind of thing. So I keep these to remind me that like I'm actually making a difference. Because sometimes I feel like, well, does this really matter? But it totally does.
That's how you raise money. That's how you get donations, James. Firstbook.org. Yes. Thank you. Lauren, what do you have for us?
Well, first, I just want to say that I've had a wonderful time and I've learned so much financially. So I'm excited to actually continue my relationship with everybody here after the show. But yeah, I if you want to find me, you can find me at thelaurenpeacock.com. So if you want to look for any of the articles on relationships and dating, and if anybody has, any questions or they want to learn a little bit more about maybe dating websites and apps and things to use, or kind of maybe, the process, and as well, the divorce case, if you are going through a divorce and maybe what concerns or questions that you may have. The divorce case is a really great, once again, like we talked about earlier, it is a subscription and membership. So each month you do get a box, and those products are picked out by me each month, or things that I wanted or wish I had during my divorce. And they're all self-help, all self-care. And with the membership, you also I write a weekly column about topics about divorce. And, there is a community of women going through the same types of things. So it is something that, if you want to join, you can go to thedivorcecase.com and find all the information there. I did also write the book, Female Likes Cheese Comes with Dogs, Stories About Divorce, Dating, and Saying I Do. And it is a memoir, comedic memoir about my life, about the mistakes I made, getting married young, kind of learning about that experience and kind of what happened, and then going out into the dating world and finding love again. And that you can find on Amazon as well as the website. But yes, I mean, I get it. I know what it's like to be out there and be dating at a young age and again here in my 30s when I've done it again. So, you know, it's just been wonderful, honestly, just kind of talking to other people who, you know, have gone through, you know, whether it's finances, you know, married and divorced, and it's just, I've had a wonderful time. So.
I've had a wonderful time as well. I have gone through it. That's why this is my therapy. 2 divorces, but I'm gonna do it again. The third time is gonna be a charm. That's why I keep telling myself in my daily mantras, the third time is a charm. I'm sorry, I got distracted. I want to thank you all for being guests on today's episode of the Roundtable Talk Show. And I especially want to thank everyone who tuned in to watch this show live, as well as everyone who is watching it in the archives. Just because you didn't catch the show live doesn't mean you're not important, and it definitely doesn't mean we still don't need your support, because we do. Please go ahead and share the show, but don't just watch the show. Don't just share the show. Support our guests. Our guests were here this morning to share so much information with you, so please support them. Their website link is in the Facebook post, but as always, don't just visit the website. Follow them on social media. Reach out to them. Send them a message. And when you do, please let them know Sharifa Hardy says hi. Now, if you're interested in more ways that I can help your business, or maybe you want to be a guest on the Roundtable Talk Show, please visit my website at asksharifa.com. Until Monday morning, everyone have a happy Mother's Day and a safe and a blessed weekend. Bye now.